Thank you very much for joining us this morning. We are announcing our Dublin and our full Irish schedule for the summer of 2019. I'm joined by Niall, Gibbons, CEO of Tourism Ireland here on my right, and Vincent Harrison, Commercial Director from the DAA here on my left. We will start off talking about the growth that we're actually announcing next year, and Niall and Vincent will also comment on that and the growth in tourism here in Ireland and across the DAA's airports. And then I'll move on to an update on a few Ryanair business topics, and then we'll move into a questions and answers session. So first thing to say is this will be our biggest ever Irish schedule. That's across Ireland but also here at Dublin. In the coming year, Ryanair will carry 16.4 million customers here in Ireland. We've never done that before. 13.6 will be in Dublin. I'll go through the detail of that, but you can see across the 4 bases, 7 airports. Next summer we'll operate 150 routes. We will have 1,000 weekly flights. There are 9 new routes that we're adding here in Dublin, 5 new routes that will be added in Cork, and 1 new route at Shannon. There's the details of the new routes. So from Dublin next summer you'll be able to fly to Bordeaux, Bournemouth, Cagliari, Frankfurt, Gothenburg, Lourdes, Luxembourg, London Southend and Thessaloniki. From Cork we've already announced Budapest, London, Malta and Poznan, and we've since added Naples as a new route in Cork. And from Shannon we will be adding Ibiza as a new route. So this is great news, I think, for Irish tourism. I think it shows you that there is still plenty of room to grow here at Dublin, plenty of room to grow across Dublin, and it will be, as I said, our biggest ever schedule here in Dublin and across Ireland. There you can see what Dublin will look like next year. As I said, 13.6 million customers in its own right. That will be up 3%, with 97 routes and more flights also added on 13 of the most popular summer routes that we have. In Cork we've already announced 4, but we've since added Naples as a new route in Cork. That's 30% growth in Cork next summer, and we think that ties into the future development of the southern, the south coast, Cork City in particular, and we think there's plenty of opportunity to keep growing in Cork. We've also announced a pilot training partnership with AFTA in Cork, and a lot of our pilots across Europe will now be trained in Cork in the coming years. In Shannon, as I've said, we'll have just under 50 weekly flights. We'll have 16 routes in total, more flights to Manchester, and we have also added Ibiza as a new summer route. And in Kerry we will continue to run the schedule that we're running at the moment, and similarly in Knock. This passenger growth, 16.4 million, if you take that traffic, and that's just for Ryanair in Ireland alone, that would be the world's 23rd biggest airline. So Ryanair Ireland, if it was its own separate airline, is now bigger than Swiss, bigger than Thai, bigger than Aeroflot. It's actually the same size as Qantas. So I think that gives you an idea of the importance of Ireland, but also the size of Ryanair's Irish operation. In terms of what this means for tourism, and I'm then going to hand over to Niall, if you look at where do tourists who come to Ireland come from, obviously the UK being the biggest contributor, and a lot of that being people coming back home for family connections, Northern Ireland for obvious reasons, the USA, Germany, France, Spain and Italy. You can see that, if you take Germany, we have 7 routes connecting and providing access into Ireland from Germany, 2 to the rest of Ireland, that's 9 in total. If you look at Spain, we've got 18 Spanish destinations connecting into Dublin, and we've got 9 in the rest of Ireland. So if you look at the development of Irish tourism in terms of where Europeans are coming from across Europe into Ireland, that is directly linked and correlated to the access that Ryanair is providing from those European destinations into Ireland. If you look at that in terms of tourist spend, if you take the 16.4 million customers, that's the second point there on the slide, that roughly translates to over 4 million inbound tourists. That's about just over 40% of the total. Those tourists who come on Ryanair flights will spend over 2.3 billion in the Irish economy, which is, I think, shows the importance of tourism. For us, it shows the importance of the connectivity that we're providing from Europe into Ireland. So I'm now going to hand over to Niall Gibbons, who will add some more colour on that.
Great, thank you very much, Kenny, and delighted to see the growth that's coming next year. We've had a good working relationship with Ryanair over many years, and we're seeing a great renaissance in Irish tourism. It's the 8th consecutive year of growth that we've had this year. Growth so far for 2018 up 8%. Further air capacity increases coming this winter, and we're delighted to see this increase coming next summer. We've always said that there's an absolute direct correlation between air access performance and tourism performance. And no better slide than the next one, which is, what is it?
It's this one here, just there.
This gives you a sort of sense of the trend of visitor numbers over the last 8 years. And you can see the top line red is Great Britain. A slight falter in 2017 after the Brexit referendum, but a slight recovery in numbers so far in 2018. What the star performer being mainland Europe, tourism numbers increasing from 2 million to almost 3.5, and on the verge of pipping Britain as our biggest market. And spectacular growth from North America as well, the blue line there, and very steady growth from developing markets. And the next line is the air access picture, which is a very similar path, so to speak. You can see mainland Europe being the star performer from an air access perspective. And that just gives you a sense, compared to what you've heard today, in relation to where the tourism line is likely to go. The North American blue line and other lines, so they're, relatively speaking, steady state. They are showing good increases off a lower base. But mainland Europe being a very, very strong performer. In that context, really good to see the growth coming from the likes of France, Germany, Sweden, Italy. Very, very important tourism markets from our perspective. Good to see increases in Great Britain as well. And despite what's happening in relation to Brexit and currency, we're likely to see a small increase in the number of seats available from Great Britain. There are about 230,000 seats every single week from Great Britain into Ireland, and overall next summer we expect to see in excess of 600,000 seats every week in the summer schedule. We work very closely with Ryanair in relation to promoting those routes. We do a lot of joint advertising around the various markets. These are just some examples, pushing out, for example, the Wild Atlantic Way across mainland Europe and also in Great Britain, but also pushing the value message as well, because if you just look around at what's available on the shop shelf at the moment from a value perspective, it's probably never been cheaper actually to get to Ireland, and that's a very strong message that we'll be pushing out to the tourists next year. So with that, I'm going to pass back and say congratulations and thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Dan. Vincent, I'll hand over to you.
Just on behalf of Dublin Airport, we're delighted to be here to welcome further growth from Ryanair. We're experiencing a very strong year again in 2018 at the airport. Passenger numbers are up 6% year to date. We expect this year our passenger numbers will exceed 31 million passengers at the airport. 5 years ago, the passenger numbers were about 20 million, so that's over 50% increase in the activity at the airport over the last 5 years, and Ryanair has been behind a very strong proportion of that growth. We're seeing growth across all of our markets, including the UK. The UK is obviously our largest single country destination from Dublin Airport, and vitally important. So notwithstanding the fact that the economy is uncertain and there's a lot of uncertainty in the UK, we're seeing growth of about 1% in that market this year. Obviously great to see a couple of additional destinations in the Ryanair schedule to the UK. So we're still confident in that market, but our stronger growth areas across the airport have been mainland Europe up 7%, transatlantic up 16%, and the rest of the world, where we've seen a lot of new airlines and a lot of new activity in recent years, up 20%. So September was our 54th consecutive month of growth in Dublin Airport. Delighted to see what I think is a typical range of destinations from Ryanair, with big city pairs, double daily activity into London and into Frankfurt. Clearly important both from a business, a tourism and traffic in both directions, and obviously an exciting range of new summer destinations for the holidays as well. So just like to welcome all of this activity and wish Ryanair great success as they've had in recent years in their growth.
Great, thanks Vincent. I'll move on to current developments. First thing I would say, look, it's never been a better time for customers to get great value fares. We've announced that our Q2 fares are down 3% on last year. The difference between us and competition continues to grow. I think it's going to be a winter of very competitive fares for consumers across Europe. We're running some of the best promotions that we've ever run before. So it's a great time to book for Irish consumers, whether you're booking breaks this autumn and winter or whether you're getting ahead and booking for the summer of next year. That's one of the messages that we would have. In terms of current developments, look, fares are down, fuel is up, and I'll say a bit more about that, and staff costs are up. That's a trend across the industry. Weaker airlines will go bust with fuel now at $85, $86 a barrel. There's been a 50% increase in the price of aviation fuel since this time last year, which is very, very significant. ATC staff shortages over this past summer and the usual and the typical French strikes that we have at the start and at the end of the summer have actually made the summer of 2018 the worst summer ever for disruptions and cancellations. More can be done about that in Brussels by the European Commission, but also particularly by the governments in Germany, the UK and Italy, where we're starting to see weak performance on ATC. Every airline is saying the same. It's not because the skies are too busy, it's because there's a shortage of staff, particularly at the weekends, which is causing delays. And I think most people that I know have suffered a delay when they travel regularly over the summer. Summer of 2019 could also be bad. So we will continue to make noise about this because we don't want some of the same mistakes to be repeated. We've made good progress on union agreements here in Ireland, in Italy, in the UK, Spain and Germany, and that will continue through the autumn. We've said we are targeting to have some more agreements done by Christmas. There's no specific timeline, but we are more optimistic that there will not be further disruption, and I think our intention is clear that we want to get these agreements done. Brexit, we should all still be worried about and all still be talking about. I think over the summer the two sides got further apart. In the past 2 weeks now it does look like there is a more conciliatory tone between London and Brussels, but there is no real progress until the transition agreement is signed, and it gives us 20 more months of the status quo. But in the meantime, there is a risk that in April of next year, it will not be possible to fly between the UK and Ireland until that is done. And we're very, very happy to be announcing the growth that we're announcing here today. ATC, I've mentioned. I'll just draw your attention to that table there, because particularly Stansted. If you take Stansted Airport, it's about 15% of the traffic in and out of London, but it suffered about 52% of the delays. And if you look at Heathrow in comparison, it's about half of the traffic in and out of London, but it got 0% delays. So clearly in Q1 and in Q2 of the calendar year, the Oberon report will say the same thing. Heathrow is being favoured, and that may have been in someone's interest a number of years ago, but now it's unfair to Stansted, it's unfair to the other airports in the London area, and it is penalising our customers, it's penalising Stansted, and we want that to stop. More staff need to be added, and ATC needs to be looked at next year so we don't have a repeat of what we've had this past summer. In terms of $85 oil, as I said, look, it's oil is up 50% compared to this time last year. Oil makes about half of the cost base of any one airline, right? So it is absolutely significant. You've seen Primera, a Scandinavian airline, go bust. You've seen Small Planets, a Polish-German airline, go bust in the past 2 weeks. I think probably it's fair to say for people in the room here, and from an Irish point of view, if you take the past 12 months in aviation, industrial relations at Ryanair was the new story. For the coming 12 months, it will be about fuel, it will be about consolidation, it will be about rationalisation, and it will be about which airlines go bust, because it looks like fuel is not going to go below $80 a barrel. A lot of people are predicting it will hit 3 digits for the price of fuel. Then that simply means consolidation. It simply means airlines will go out of the market, and it means that you will see capacity being cut. If you take this past number of weeks, we've announced that we're trimming capacity in Eindhoven and Bremen. Primera, as I said, have gone bust. EasyJet are closing their Porto base. Lufthansa are leaving Düsseldorf, which was their third biggest hub in Germany. And Wizz have also announced that they are making cuts in Poznan. About 8% capacity is due to be added this winter. So with higher fuel, also with a higher dollar, bear in mind that the dollar has gained 10% against the euro even since March, and everybody's buying their aircraft and everybody is buying their fuel in dollars. It's going to be a difficult winter for airlines. I think you're going to see low fares. Yeah, you're going to see a lot of turbulence in terms of airlines cutting capacity, trimming back in certain bases, and we're going to see some airlines go out of the market, and that's going to continue for the coming 12 months. In terms of union progress, I think, look, this has been a major story for the past year. But look at the progress we've made in Ireland. I've talked to a lot of you in the months of July and August when we had the 5 pilot strikes here in Dublin. But we've made great progress in Dublin, both with pilots and with cabin crew. And we're making the same progress across Europe. Currently in talks with the German pilots, the German cabin crew, the same in Spain and the same in Portugal. And we hope to have major agreements in place in our big markets between now and Christmas. If we don't have them by Christmas, soon after. There's no specific timeline in place for these. There are red lines that we will not cross. So look, we are a low-cost business and there are red lines on productivity and on costs that we will not cross. But we're working with unions for 10 months and we think we've made very good progress, and we're optimistic that we won't have further disruption. And I think Ireland is a good testimony to the fact, the changes that we've made and the progress that we've made. Specifically touching on the offer to pilots, and this is a slide that Michael communicated in Brussels a number of weeks back. You can see, look, where if you ask the unions what the pilots are looking for, and I think a lot of what they're saying would be local taxes, local contracts, work under local law, and we are saying yes, and we have written yes to the pilots union and to the cabin crew union, saying the same thing. We're saying to the unions that are striking, and on September 28 we had 5 countries go on strike. Now, we still operated 90% of the flights. Like in Ireland, when we had the 5 strikes over the summer, we still operated 95% of our flights, and over 75% of our pilots operated. But we are saying things that we wouldn't have said before, which is yes to local contracts, yes to working under local law, whatever that country may be, and local contracts. And the best thing the unions can do is sit down across the table from us from a negotiating point of view, as the Irish pilots have done, as the Irish cabin crew have done, same in Italy, and continue to make progress there. In terms of our new bag policy, we announced this about 4 weeks ago now. What we've seen in the past 4 weeks is a lot of customers save money as they've switched from paying at least 25 euros for the 20 kilo bag to €8 for the 10 kilo bag. You may have seen yesterday Wizz have announced basically the exact same bag policy from the 1st of November. We think other airlines will do the same, because everybody is dealing with that issue at the gates, that if you've got 100 to 150 wheelie bags that need to be tagged at the gate and put into the hold, it causes an impact on punctuality. We think this new policy is fair. We think it's transparent. We think customers will get used to it. Not everybody is going to like it, but we think, look, ultimately 60% of our customers are going to continue to bring 2 bags into the cabin. We've increased the size of the small bag by 40%. So over 90% of a typical weekend bag across Europe, and we've tested this, will fit into our small bag sizer. So for people heading on 1, 2, 3 night stays, they will get what they need into a small bag, and that will fit into the sizer. This isn't about making money, it's about speeding up the turnarounds and improving our punctuality, because as I said at the top of the presentation, that matters more when you've got ATC staff shortages and other things going on. So this will speed up the boarding of our aircraft. In terms of opportunities to grow tourism, we think there's plenty of opportunities here. Tourism Ireland has done a fantastic job, and Ireland has a fantastic product. Every country has its opportunities and its challenges. Yes, we hear from our customers that Ireland can be expensive. It's never been cheaper to get here, so we will continue to do our bit to provide access and to make sure that the airfares are the cheapest. When it comes to things like restaurants and hotels, yes, people who fly with Ryanair, when we do our surveys, they do say, yeah, Dublin is wonderful. It can be expensive, so I think that's a wider message to everyone involved in the hospitality sector, that we do need to watch our competitiveness. But there is plenty of opportunity. The Wild Atlantic Way is the gift that keeps on giving, and there are plenty of opportunities to develop other parts of Ireland. I think the government has the right strategy. You've seen how inbound traffic has grown since APD was removed in 2014. And we think that this can absolutely continue, whether it's people coming from the UK, coming from the US, which isn't our business, but that's obviously growing as well, supported by a stronger dollar. But I think really targeting significantly Europeans from those countries that Niall listed. This is from the CSO, which was published, I think, in the Indo a few weeks ago, and you can see even as the cost of living in Ireland is increasing, the one thing that has bucked the trend, and at times we'd love to change this, but since 2013 you can see that the price of airfares to and from Ireland, but this is for Irish consumers leaving Ireland, has actually, it's one of the few things that has gone the other way in the past 5 years, which is great for the Irish consumer. Brexit, look, it's, as I've said, there is an agreement which is mostly there. The ink hasn't all dried on those pages, but there is a transition agreement that is in place. That needs to be signed over the autumn. It does look like in the past 2 weeks that both sides are getting closer. If that transition agreement gets signed, then the status quo, including flight rights, continues for another 20 months, which is good. Then both sides need to work on what's the permanent lasting solution to replace open skies. That work still needs to be done. But we are now not the only airline saying there's a risk that there will be no flying in April if there isn't a transition deal that is signed soon. Plenty of other airlines, including Air France, including other legacy carriers, have said that risk does exist in April 2019 until that transition agreement is done. So we're saying to both London and to Brussels, and we are actively lobbying both, that the transition deal gets done, because even the most hardcore Brexiteer in London didn't vote for not being able to fly to Europe, whether it's for weeks or days or months. So in summary, look, fares are down. That's good for consumers. Fuel is up, and it looks like it's going to continue to go up. You saw what happened to the stock markets across the world yesterday as US interest rates have gone up, and it looks like the trade war is going to escalate, not de-escalate, but that is going to, I think, create this new type of economic uncertainty. Our staff costs have gone up, and they're up across the industry because it's a highly competitive time for airlines trying to get pilots, particularly 737-800 type rated pilots. ATC is something that we want to call out specifically because it was the worst summer in record for us, for EasyJet, for Aer Lingus, for every airline, for Lufthansa, for BA. And that's specifically driven by the typical French strikes that we have, but also the ATC staff shortages across Europe, and then in particular some issues naming the UK, naming Germany and Italy, and that does need to be improved. And they have time to improve that in advance of next summer, so we don't see the same situation that we have in July, in August. We're making good progress on our agreements with the unions, and we hope to have more agreements done in the coming 6 months. I think this new schedule that we've announced is going to be great for Irish tourism, to the tune of just under 2.5 billion tourism spend it will bring in to the country, and we want to do more while the risk of Brexit looms. As I said, 150 new routes, 15 new routes, and there's some fantastic routes providing connectivity into Dublin. Our biggest ever schedule here in Dublin, and our biggest ever schedule across Ireland, which we're very proud to do our bit for Irish tourism, and long may that growth for Tourism Ireland and for the DAA continue. So great, that's the presentation. Open up to questions.
Kenny, two of your those are continuation of winter routes that you announced. Are they going to be based in Dublin? Are the crew and the flights, the aircraft, going to be based in Dublin? And do they come with any terms and conditions in terms of your dealing with the unions?
No, yes, they will be based in They will be based in Dublin. Routes that we operate in the winter that we extend into the summer, that's because they're working very well in terms of the demand is good, the loads are good. So that's typically what we would do: extend those winter routes into the summer, and they will be Irish-based crew, Irish-based aircraft.
And is Frankfurt Ham still in your plans? Because Frankfurt Ham, you're putting more emphasis down on the main Frankfurt.
We are, and I think and in our view, it's a good example of how you can work well at both. That it's a different type of customer on different types of trips. But so far, Frankfurt Main and Frankfurt Dagenham have both been growing and working well together. We tend to get more leisure in and out of Frankfurt Ham, but you'll also get people who have used it for Luxembourg. So it'll be interesting to see now that we're adding Luxembourg what that does, and that's good competition for airports and for routes. And Frankfurt Main primarily tends to be a lot of connecting passengers, but also a lot of business passengers. So I think similarly with Bergamo and Milan, Bergamo and Milan, similarly with Zaventem and Charleroi, we're able to, and if you take the airports, we've added Southend as well as the other airports that we have in London. So Ryanair can operate at multiple different airports in the same big conurbation, and all can work and all can grow.
Could I ask, what are your current staffing numbers? I mean, generally in the airline, in the pilot grade, and are you still having trouble recruiting pilots? And do you have pilots who are still defecting to other airlines?
I'll start with the reverse of those. As other airlines are going bust, namely Primera, Small Planets, and others are cutting capacity. It's as much as we're saying generally at a macro level globally, it's a good time to be a pilot because Asian airlines are expanding. They've tended to take pilots from the Middle East. Then airlines in the Middle East are saying, right, we need to take pilots in the first place. They look at Europe. So that's the bigger, wider trend. We're in terms of our pipeline of recruiting first officers, captains, and cadets. That pipeline is very, very healthy, and we've grown that in the past year. Every airline loses pilots, but our turnover of pilots would be no higher than it would have been historically, and it's in line with the industry. So we've absolutely got enough pilots. We are taking aircraft in the next number of years as we're going to grow to 200 million passengers. And you've seen what we've announced in terms of the start of that pipeline in terms of the cadets, but also hiring pilots from pretty much every other airline across Europe.
And how many people are working for Ryanair now?
People working for Ryanair, it's about 12,000 people working for Ryanair in total, and within that you'll have about 4,500 pilots.
And what airlines do you anticipate could be in difficulty? You mentioned there that you anticipate that there are going to be further collapses of airlines. Who do you think is at high risk? I'd
start looking at anyone who's not hedged. All big airlines will be hedged. We're 90% hedged this year, and we're about 35% hedged so far into next year. If you look at, Norwegian will be the biggest airline that people say, well, what's going to happen to Norwegian? And I'm not going to speculate on what does happen to Norwegian, but Norwegian were making a loss when oil was $42 a barrel. When oil is $85 a barrel, you're making a bigger loss. So there is a lot of speculation within the industry on what happens to Norwegian. Does it go bust, or does it become part of one of the bigger airline groups? Does it end up being a lot smaller? But I would principally say a lot of the smaller airlines, they can't hedge because of their size. So they would be greatly exposed, much more exposed than any big airline to the price of oil. They'll also be more exposed to the inflation on the price of pilots that would have existed in the past year. So I think that's primarily where I would look. So it'll be the smaller, more regional airlines first and foremost, and then you'd start to look at the bigger carriers with weaker balance sheets, with a more unhedged fuel position, who I think will get into difficulty in the next 12 months. That's something that when you stand back, that's actually good for the industry, because what's good for the industry is healthy airlines. Healthier, bigger airlines that don't go bust and leave customers stranded is the best thing for consumers. Primera went bust, and it went bust overnight. So similar to Monarch, a lot of its customers were stranded in places in Spain who couldn't get back, had to get back at their own cost because Primera was not part of any government scheme in terms of supporting those customers getting back. So fewer, bigger, healthier airlines that don't go bust regardless of the price of fuel is the best outcome for consumers. And as I said, what we expect, the biggest trend in the next 12 months will be, where's fuel going to be at, where's the dollar going to be at against the euro, because that's going to force consolidation, it's going to force rationalisation, and weaker airlines will go out of business. They'll first start cutting capacity, but it's going to be the ones that are unhedged that are going to be the most exposed.
One of the reasons why the Minister for Finance felt safe to raise the hospitality VAT was this tourism boom. Are you happy that tourists aren't sensitive to this sort of thing, and that the tourism boom will continue? Are there any threats on the horizon to such numbers?
Well, I think if you take, I'll first for Ryanair, and then I'm sure Niall is probably the best person in the country to comment on it. I think, look, Ireland, tourists love coming to Ireland from Europe. That's absolutely clear. That's why we're adding this extra access. And from our point of view, it's, the airfares are going to be cheaper. So for Germans, Italians, Spanish, Brits who want to come to Ireland, whether it's Dublin or Ireland, the Wide Atlantic Way, it's going to be cheaper to get there. We've got to watch the competitiveness of Ireland when you are there. Now, I think it's up to hotels and restaurants to decide what they're going to do. If they pass on the 4.5% VAT increase on their prices, is that going to make hotels more expensive? Yes, it is. Is that going to turn tourists off? Not this winter, not this summer, but I think we have have to keep an ongoing view on the competitiveness, the prices in Ireland, to make sure that we're not putting ourselves too expensive. If you take hotels, the average hotel price in Dublin, if you add 4.5%, it's then only Reykjavik, Amsterdam and Copenhagen have more expensive hotels than Dublin. And there has been inflation in the price of hotels in Dublin in the past year. But I think that's a question for the hotels. I'll ask Niall to comment from a Tourism Ireland point of view.
Yeah, look, I mean, the numbers have been very good from a tourism perspective. We've seen colossal growth in the last 7 or 8 years. There are risks on the horizon, a lot of them have been outlined already. Air access is the leading indicator of how business is going to fare in the next 12 months, and the air access pipeline is very good. That's really encouraging. In relation to the risks for the industry, I mean, notwithstanding the VAT increase, competitiveness is absolutely the key one at the moment. The price of getting here is actually really competitive. It's very, very good. Within the hotel sector, within our main urban areas, the price has got expensive. And places like Dublin, by the way, we're not competing with cities like London, Paris or Rome. We're competing with second-tier cities like Barcelona, Copenhagen, Amsterdam, and they're the places that we have to keep a watch in relation to price. We want to put a bigger emphasis in relation to regionality and growing business of the main season. That's why we work on some of those ads with Ryanair that you were seeing, promoting low fares off-season, particularly into the regional areas of Ireland. And we'll have a new campaign that we'll be launching in December as well, as part of a global campaign for 2019. And we've got an additional increase in our budget this week for Marketing Ireland Abroad, which is very encouraging. And we're seeing an expansion of Tourism Ireland activities in association with some of the carriers next year.
But in terms of specifically the hospitality market account, what are you concerned with?
Oh, listen, the industry are very upset about it. I mean, the Irish Tourism Industry Confederation and the Restaurants Association of Ireland have already made statements in relation to it. It's an additional cost of €460 million for the business. The total tourism business to the island of Ireland will be €6 billion this year. It employs in excess of 300,000 people across the island of Ireland. We'll be looking to grow that, and it just gives us another pressure point, so to speak. But again, you know, if you don't have growing air access, you know, you're paddling against the current, so to speak, and the fact that we have additional air access gives us an opportunity to grow further in 2019.
Could I ask Vincent if the airport has been given any indication from other airlines that they will expand at Dublin Airport, and if you are happy that the passenger experience at Dublin Airport in 2019 will be alright about that? And just moving on to Niall then, the other side of the coin, could you elaborate somehow on the regionalisation that you mentioned? That are there any moves to bring carriers into, say, Shannon or Cork or Knock or something like that, to deflect some traffic from Dublin?
Well, I'll just address the first question. Yes, we're seeing growth across our customer base. We have almost 50 airlines operating at Dublin Airport. Ryanair happens to be the biggest of those, but we've seen just yesterday a new route to Calgary announced by WestJet. Canada has been a booming market for traffic in both directions over the last 3 or 4 years. We've had new services to Hong Kong and to Beijing open this summer. So I think all of the comments that Kenny has made about the backdrop to the industry, the oil prices, all of those things are risk factors as we look forward. But certainly we see 2019 being a year of growth if we assume Brexit doesn't become a significant challenge during the middle of the year. In relation to infrastructure, we're shortly going to go to consultation in relation to our formal plans for the next 5 years. We've had very good discussions with our airline customers, including Ryanair and Aer Lingus, in terms of the shape and structure of those plans. We're shortly to commence construction of our new runway. So I think in the medium term, we are very focused on putting the capacity in place to ensure that the service standards are as high as they have been for recent years. Dublin Airport in the last number of years has performed in the top 3 of customer satisfaction in Europe. But we have to say the pace of growth in the last few years has certainly created pinch points in capacity, and we're looking to make sure that the passenger experience is as strong next year as it has been in recent years.
And on the regionalisation, I mean, it's important that we continue the dialogue with regional airports as well, and notwithstanding the great work that's been done in Dublin. You know, examples this year include a lot of work done with Ryanair on the service into Berlin and to Kerry. We did a lot of work on the GB routes into Shannon. I know there's Ryanair today. We did a lot of work with Air France as well into Cork, Norwegian into Shannon and Cork. And it's important that we keep up that message as well. That Dublin is the major gateway. People coming to Ireland do want to do Dublin as part of their holiday, but regional airports provide a very important role in growing that business into our regions.
Do many transatlantic flights, for example, go to any of the other airports? It would seem to be a good idea given the capacity constraints in hotels and Dublin.
Yeah, there's good transatlantic access into Shannon, and there are a number of carriers that go in there. You've got Norwegian going to Cork as well, so there is good regional spread in that respect. But the bottom line is that for a lot of our tourists who are coming to Ireland, someone I was talking to the European Tour Operators Association recently said it's hard to sell Hamlet without the Prince. The bottom line is that a lot of people want to do Dublin as part of an overall Ireland experience, so it is the key gateway for 80% of all traffic coming into Ireland.
So 20% would go elsewhere.
I think, I mean, not asked the question, I would say about Dublin Airport, just as someone who probably sees 3-4 airports a week. As someone who sees 3-4 airports myself a week, I think Dublin Airport does a very good job at getting people through the airport quickly, and that's the number one thing when you're at an airport coming or going. It's, do I get through quickly? If you take the volume of people in the summer months, and particularly things like security, just getting people through that's a massive operation, and that's the number one thing that matters to business travellers and leisure travellers, is just getting to the gate as quickly as possible and not being anxious about delayed. Look, it's a great time for Irish tourism. The best thing I think you can have is Ireland being competitive, Ryanair growing and adding access into Europe, and Aer Lingus doing what they're doing very well at the moment, which is adding access to North America. I think that's a very happy marriage that is best for the Irish industry, because no one does short haul from Europe better than we do, and Aer Lingus have a fantastic long haul product, and the dollar is strong, so they will be bringing plane loads of Americans in here, and they will spend time in Dublin, they'll spend time around the rest of the country, and a lot of them will probably jump on aircraft and go to other European destinations, and that's I think the winner in that is Irish tourism, so long may that continue.
You have 2 French airports and a Scandinavian airport on that list. They're markets you stayed away from. Is this a sign of the new unionised Ryanair going back into regulation?
Absolutely. I think if you take France, which we would have years ago said, look, we're not going to have French, we'll have good inbound business into France, but we won't have French bases, and we closed our Marseille base because of the labour situation. And now we're going back in with French bases, with French-based aircraft, French-based pilots and French-based crew. So I think it's everything comes full circle in the end. Now, you also have a French government which is more pro-business and looking to change the requirements for operating in France. So we probably could have operated in open French bases without having French-based pilots and crew, but we've decided to do that. And I think France, we're about 7% of the French market. We see plenty of opportunity in France because it's a market very much dominated around the big cities, and it's EasyJet and it's Air France, but particularly the regional airports in France. And we started with Bordeaux and Marseille, but there's plenty of opportunity in other regional airports to add new competition in France.
And you've put out Scandinavia in the past,
we'll always look at it. It doesn't mean now because the new approach we have now with pilots and crew that we're about to rush into Scandinavian bases. More from a commercial point of view, we're more than happy to let Norwegian and Scandinavian keep slugging it out in a phone box as they have been for the past number of years. So it'll be a commercial decision first and foremost. We'll add more bases in Scandinavia and growth in Scandinavia when it's the right thing to do commercially.
Aeroflot was one of the big announcements this week. You are the designated Irish carrier for Russia. Are you going to go there because the Russians have started on their side? Is that describing that?
I'm sure we probably will at some point in time, but you know what? It's not in the immediate horizon, because we see probably more opportunities in the closer Middle East and in places like France. They'd be higher on the list than looking at Russia. I think airlines doing Moscow, it's a bit of a vanity project because you can colour in a lot of the map. We're not that interested. It's a long sector. Yes, even if the flying rights is sorted, you then have to look at things like the certain rights for the based crew or non-based crew if they have to overnight there. There's complications. It's a very, very long sector for us. We'd probably be more than happy to do another Dublin Lanzarote and make more money from that than adding Moscow anytime soon. But wouldn't rule it out. You can see we're growing in the Ukraine, so Moscow is one of the more obvious next places at some point in time.
And for now, big potential in Russia with Aeroflot announcing the route this week.
Yeah, there's high business in Russia. We don't have an operation there, but we work with the Irish Embassy, and we've seen more interest from that market coming into Ireland, and certainly from a spend perspective, there's some really good opportunities there.
But again, it's just Ryanair Ireland, if it was its own airline, is bigger than Aeroflot. So so let's not,
Ryanair is 40% of the business.
adding more routes from Italy, Germany, Spain into Ireland. I think for some people it's okay. Is that new? Is that sexy? But look, it's great business. It's great business for us. I think it's great business for the airport, and it's great for Tourism Ireland. It just keeps working.
How much more potential have you to grow in our passengers? Can you bring that to 20?
20 is a big number, but I think over a point in time, if you went back 5-8 years ago, you probably would have looked at 16.4 and said, gosh, is that possible? I think Ireland is one of the most open economies, not just in Europe but in the world, so I think there's plenty of opportunity to grow here. As a Corkonian, as a total aside, as someone who lives in Dublin and works in Dublin, I think if you take the government's development plan for Cork in the next 20 years, I think that's a fantastic thing, not just because I'm from that part of the country. I won't benefit because I'm not living there, but I think that's a great thing to show how Ireland can continue to develop and take some of the supersaturation that does exist in Dublin. We do have a housing issue here. We hear that when we interview Europeans to come and work in Dublin, because they're saying, I love Dublin as a city, really want to come and work in Ryanair labs in Dublin, but I can't get accommodation. And I think we have to solve that in Dublin. One of the ways of solving that in Dublin is developing the rest of the country. As you develop the rest of the country, I'm sure at some point in time we'll be sitting here looking at Cork saying, it's got a much, much higher traffic number. I am speaking as a Corkonian now. It's got a much, much higher traffic number, but also wouldn't it be great to have some of the world's biggest businesses based in places like Cork, Limerick and Galway, and not have everything in Dublin? I'm not saying anyone's going to leave Dublin, but it would be great if we were able to do that. As I think the UK have done a very good job at developing Manchester as kind of the second hub city, and you do have some global businesses have moved from London to the Manchester region for all those same reasons. So I think over the next 10 years, if that happens, then to answer the question, yes, absolutely, we could grow to a much bigger number in Ireland, and include within that probably bigger growth in places like Cork, but ongoing growth in places like Dublin. Okay.
I'm done.
Great. Okay, thanks very much.